I never imagined my life would turn into a battlefield on the home front. Not after all the real battlefields I've seen. Yet here I am, orchestrating the ruin of the woman I once vowed to love forever. Betrayal changes a man. It narrows your world to a cold, clear focus. In my case, it ignited a quiet fury and a resolve to do things by the book, my book. If revenge is a dish best served cold, I was plating up a 5-course feast on ice. It started with small things. Suspicion often does. One evening, my wife, Melissa, came home 2 hours late from her yoga class. She claimed class ran over, but she couldn't meet my eyes as she mumbled the excuse. A sheen of sweat clung to her collarbone. I remember joking, "Some yoga session, huh? You look beat." She forced a laugh and slipped past me to the shower. That night, the scent of unfamiliar cologne on her skin lingered in our bed. I stared at the dark ceiling for hours, heart thudding dully. A soldier's gut instinct is rarely wrong in combat or in marriage. Over the next week, more red flags unfurled. Melissa guarded her phone like classified intel, flinching whenever I entered the room unexpectedly. She started dressing up more on ordinary days, wearing perfume to run errands. And there were new errands constantly. Late-night grocery runs for one forgotten item, sudden coffee meetups with an old college friend I'd never heard of. Each lie was small, but I cataloged them like evidence tags at a crime scene. The clincher came on a Saturday when I knew she was lying. We were supposed to have a rare date night, just the two of us. I was looking forward to it, trying to rekindle something. But that afternoon, she put on an apologetic face and claimed a coworker, Jenna, had a crisis and desperately needed a girls' night out. I nodded calmly, hiding the twist of anger in my gut. "Of course, hun. Tell Jenna I hope things get better," I said. Melissa smiled in relief, a quick, guilty smile, and left home within minutes, all dolled up in a way that seemed far too glamorous for consoling a distraught friend. The moment her car disappeared down our street, I leapt into action. If I was right about this, I didn't intend to let her slip away so easily. Reconnaissance time. My military years trained me well in surveillance and patience. I changed into black jeans and a dark jacket, grabbed my keys, and followed at a distance. The city streets were busy on a Saturday night, and I had to be careful. But stealth is second nature to someone who's done covert ops in Kabul alleys at midnight. Melissa didn't go anywhere near her coworker's neighborhood. Instead, she drove downtown. I tailed her car through the neon glow of Midtown, keeping a few vehicles back. Finally, her sedan turned into the parking garage of the Bellwether Hotel, an upscale spot with a rooftop lounge and plenty of secluded corners. I felt my jaw tighten as I eased into a parking spot on the street. 2 minutes later, she emerged on foot from the garage, not alone. A man strode beside her, his hand resting intimately on the small of her back. Even in the dim sidewalk light, I recognized the easy, confident walk. Ryan, my friend. My best friend, in fact, from my army days. It felt like a physical punch to the gut, seeing him with her. I had trusted Ryan like a brother. We'd been deployed together, watched each other's backs in firefights, celebrated each other's birthdays. I'd even introduced him to Melissa years ago. This is who she was meeting. Not a nameless stranger, someone from my own inner circle. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went bloodless. They headed into the hotel lobby arm in arm. I forced myself to breathe slowly, methodically, as if calming myself before a sniper shot. Focus, Jack. Observe. Don't act yet. I wasn't ready to confront them, not without evidence, and certainly not with rage clouding my mind. In war, the moment you let anger take over, you make mistakes. I hadn't survived combat by losing my cool, and I wasn't about to start now. I waited, mentally debating my next move. If I barged in hot-headed, what would I achieve? A shouting match in the lobby, a brawl with Ryan. The image of flattening him with one punch was tempting, I won't lie. But that satisfaction would be fleeting and come at a steep cost. I'd be the bad guy in public, maybe even see the inside of a jail cell for assault. Meanwhile, Melissa could spin the narrative however suited her. No, I needed to be smart, strategic. I remembered a quote from Sun Tzu that my platoon sergeant drilled into us. Know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be in peril. In this situation, emotion made me my own worst enemy. I needed intel and a plan, not a reckless charge. So instead of confronting them, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photographs from the car. The distance and lighting weren't great, but I captured a shot of Ryan's arm around Melissa's waist as they checked in at the front desk. Another of them entering the elevator together, Melissa leaning on his shoulder, clearly more than friends. My hands were shaking, but I kept clicking until they disappeared from view. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There it was. Proof. Or at least the start of it. A part of me still whispered maybe it's innocent, some ridiculous last vestige of denial, but deep down I knew the truth, had known for weeks. This was an affair, my wife and my best friend. The betrayal cut deep into my chest, but I compartmentalized the pain behind a wall of icy resolve. I'd learned to do that in the army, to box up fear or hurt to deal with the task at hand. Mission focus. And right now, my mission was to gather enough evidence to absolutely destroy them both, legally and utterly. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I parked a block away and walked back to the Bellwether Hotel. The front desk clerk might have found it odd to see me in jeans and a ball cap, hanging around the lobby, but I blended in with other folks milling about the bar entrance. I ordered a club soda at the lounge, couldn't risk dulling my senses with liquor, and found a seat by a window that conveniently overlooked the elevators. If they came down, I'd see them. Hours crawled by. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios of what they were doing in that hotel room. I'll admit, it was torture. Every time I caught myself picturing Melissa in Ryan's arms, laughing at his jokes, tangled in the sheets. I forced the images away and instead planned. Visualize victory, I told myself, not the betrayal. I scribbled notes on a bar napkin. Photos, find PI, check finances. Lawyer, Monday, voice recording. Near midnight, they finally stepped out of the elevator. I slumped lower in my chair on instinct, though they were too wrapped up in each other to notice me. Melissa looked flushed, her hair a bit disheveled despite a quick fix of lipstick. Ryan had that self-satisfied grin I recognized from when we were younger, and he'd brag about his conquests. My stomach churned with disgust. I managed to snap a clear photo of them walking out together, fingers entwined. They parted on the sidewalk. Melissa headed back to the garage, Ryan strolling off to wherever he'd parked nearby. I debated following one of them, but Melissa was coming back to our home and I needed to be there first. I practically sprinted back to my car and drove like a demon to beat her there. Once home, I rushed inside, making sure to simulate normalcy. I changed into pajamas and even splashed some water on my face to appear groggy. When Melissa finally walked in, I was casually seated on the living room couch, flipping through channels, pretending to struggle to stay awake for the late news. My heart hammered as I glanced up with an Oscar-worthy bleary blink. "Oh hey," I mumbled, stifling a fake yawn. "You're back. How's Jenna holding up?" She froze for a split second. Just a split second, but I caught it. Then she recovered. "Oh, she's Better. We had a long talk, a few glasses of wine. I think it helped. Melissa dropped her purse by the armchair and avoided my gaze by fussing with her shoes. I noticed her makeup was refreshed. No obvious smeared lipstick or anything. Smart, she'd cleaned up signs of her tryst. But she forgot one thing: the necklace. It was a delicate gold chain with a little sapphire pendant. Definitely not what she'd left home wearing. My eyes locked on it. "That's pretty," I said lightly, nodding at the pendant. "New?" Her hand flew to the necklace. "Oh, this." For a moment, her mind clearly scrambled for a story. Then, "Jenna gave it to me tonight. Kind of a belated birthday gift. Isn't that sweet?" She looked me in the eyes and smiled, as if nothing were wrong. That smile, that smooth, lying smile, turned my stomach. This was a woman who could look at her husband and fabricate a story on the fly without blinking. I returned her smile with what little authenticity I could muster. "Very sweet," I echoed. "You have good friends." Melissa headed to bed after that, claiming exhaustion. I stayed on the couch, staring blankly at the TV as muted commercials played. When I heard the bedroom door click shut, my smile fell away and I allowed myself a moment of raw emotion. I clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. My eyes burned, and I realized I had tears of rage or heartbreak, maybe both, threatening to fall. I pressed the heels of my hands hard against my eyes and breathed slowly until I was sure I wouldn't break. In that moment, I swore two things to myself. One, I would not let Melissa see me cry or rage or lose control. She would not have that satisfaction, nor the knowledge of how deeply she wounded me. Not yet. I would play my role, the clueless, loving husband, until it was too late for her to escape the trap. And two, I was going to make her and Ryan pay dearly for this betrayal. Legally. I was going to marshal every resource and tactic as if planning a military operation, reconnaissance, strategy, psychological warfare, and an overwhelming strike at the end. Both of them would come to regret ever thinking I was an oblivious fool. That night, I barely slept. I lay on the couch with a spare blanket, listening to Melissa's soft footsteps when she occasionally paced the bedroom. Perhaps she was anxious. Perhaps guilt was gnawing at her. Or more cynically, maybe she was texting him from our bed. I wouldn't put it past her. At the first gray light of dawn, I got up. My mind was surprisingly clear. It was time to gather evidence in earnest. First, I needed to secure our financial records. Often, cheating spouses try to hide spending on their affairs. I quietly rifled through our home office filing cabinet. Melissa was the more organized one with bills and statements, and I found the neatly labeled folders: bank accounts, credit card statements, phone bills, investment accounts. I liberated the most recent year's worth of documents and carried them to my garage workshop, my private domain where she rarely ventured. Using my phone camera and a scanner app, I meticulously scanned each page to a PDF and backed them up to a secure cloud drive under a new account she wouldn't know about. Skimming the statements, patterns emerged. I saw charges for restaurants I'd never dined at, day spa appointments I knew I hadn't enjoyed, and a big one: a charge from the Bellwether Hotel's rooftop lounge 2 weeks ago. Melissa never mentioned going there with any girlfriends. It matched the profile of affair spending. In a bitter stroke of irony, I realized I was gathering intel on my wife the same way I used to gather intel on enemy targets. Document everything. Her clandestine spending would later serve as ammunition in court, proving she had used our marital funds on her affair, something a judge could address by crediting that amount back to me in the divorce settlement. I next focused on her cell phone. While she still slept, I carefully took her iPhone from her purse. My hands were steady, my heartbeat eerily slow. I was in mission mode. I knew her passcode. She'd underestimated me enough not to change it. With the phone unlocked, I navigated quickly to her messaging app. Sure enough, there was a conversation with someone saved under a woman's name, Jenna. Clever girl, using her actual friend's name as cover. But the content of the messages removed all doubt. Reading just the latest few made my stomach lurch. "Can't wait to feel you tonight. Last week was amazing," Ryan had written. There was a selfie of him shirtless in a bathroom mirror, and another line, "My place this time. I need you all to myself." The timestamp was yesterday morning, the day before their hotel meetup. Melissa's replies were equally explicit and sickeningly affectionate. She had sent him a photo, thankfully just of her in a flattering dress. Nothing too risque in that one. Captioned, "Patience, handsome. I'll make it worth your while. Still aiming for Saturday night. I'll have to invent something for Jay." Jay, that was me. She couldn't even write my name while plotting her affair. I suppose I should be grateful for that small mercy. Seeing Jack in those texts might have stung even more. I quietly forwarded the entire text thread to my own email for records. Then I checked her photo gallery, looking for any incriminating pictures. She had diligently kept their secret off her main camera roll. Nothing obvious there, but I knew a few digital forensics tricks, courtesy of a tech workshop I'd taken in the service. I ran a quick search for deleted images and cached thumbnails. A few pieces popped up. Blurry images of Melissa and Ryan kissing on what looked like a hiking trail. Another of them together at some house party. Likely she deleted them, but didn't realize some backups linger. I saved those too. Finally, I opened her email. Most of it was boring or unrelated, but an Uber receipt caught my eye. 2 nights last month, when I was away on a short training weekend, she'd taken late-night Ubers from our home address to Ryan's apartment building. The address was on the receipt. The ride back home was just before dawn on both occasions. It was all there in black and white. I forwarded those receipts to myself as well, the bile rising in my throat. My wife hadn't just made one mistake. This was an organized campaign of deceit over at least a month, possibly longer. I locked her phone and returned it to her purse exactly as it was. She was still asleep, oblivious as I gathered the threads of her lies into my growing web of proof. As I stepped out of the bedroom, I caught a glimpse of her face in the morning light. Serene, even slightly smiling in her dreams. A surge of conflicting emotions welled up. This was the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. The woman who used to wait anxiously for my return from deployments with genuine love in her eyes. I remembered how she held me when I came back from Afghanistan, trembling after my squad was hit by an IED. She'd been my rock then. I never imagined she would become the source of an even more personal explosion in my life. Why? I wanted to shake her awake and demand why she did this. Was it something I did? Was I gone too often? Or had I failed to show her enough affection? Or was it just her own restlessness, unrelated to me? Those questions would have to wait. They might never be answered to my satisfaction. And in truth, they didn't change my course of action now. I silently walked out, closing the bedroom door as gently as I could, as if not to disturb an innocent sleeper. The irony almost made me laugh. By mid-morning, I had compiled a trove of evidence, but raw evidence isn't enough. You need a battle plan for how to use it. I needed a legal strategy, one that would leave no room for Melissa to wiggle out with lies or for Ryan to escape unscathed. I'm no lawyer, but I'm a quick study and I know how to seek expert advice when necessary. This was war on a new front, and I wasn't going to charge in without an expert consultant. So that Monday, on my lunch break from work, I quietly visited an attorney. Not just any attorney, I sought out the best family law specialist I could discreetly afford. Charlotte, yes, we live in Charlotte, North Carolina, a big city by some standards and certainly big enough for anonymity, has several top-notch divorce lawyers. I chose one with a reputation for ruthlessness, a woman named Teresa Alvarez. We met in her high-rise office conference room, overlooking the bustle of uptown. I felt like I was plotting a high-level military operation, except instead of battle fatigues I wore a suit, and instead of a war map, we had divorce statutes and case files on the polished oak table. Teresa cut straight to the heart of things. "You have proof of the affair?" she asked, steepling her fingers. "Yes," I said, sliding over a USB drive. Photos, messages, financial records showing spending on the affair. I have a lot. That was an understatement. I had spent Sunday compiling everything into neat folders and timelines. A part of me was almost too eager to show it off, to have a professional confirm that I wasn't crazy and that I had them dead to rights. Teresa plugged the drive into her laptop and spent some minutes scanning the contents. I watched her eyebrows arch slightly at a few points, probably the text messages or the hotel photos. Eventually, she nodded. "This is very thorough. You weren't kidding." I only responded with a grim, tight smile. Military precision, I thought to myself. I'd treated this like an intel dossier, because it was. "North Carolina is a good jurisdiction for an aggrieved spouse in your situation," Teresa continued, adjusting her glasses. "We're technically a no-fault divorce state, meaning you don't have to prove wrongdoing to get a divorce. However, infidelity can significantly impact alimony. It's one of the few states where adultery is outright a bar to alimony for the unfaithful spouse. That means if we prove Melissa cheated, she cannot collect a dime of spousal support from you, period. I already knew this from my own preliminary research, but hearing it confirmed brought me immense relief. Melissa had a decent job, but I earned more, and I knew if she divorced me on her terms, she would likely seek alimony claiming some need. Not an uncommon ploy. However, legally, her affair would slam that door shut. "Good," I said. "She doesn't deserve a penny more than what the law forces me to give." Teresa gave a thin smile. "Furthermore, any marital assets she spent on her affair can be considered marital waste or dissipation. Courts can credit that back to you in equitable distribution. For example, if she spent $5,000 on her boyfriend, hotels, gifts, trips, the judge could give you $5,000 extra in assets or cash to make it up, or reduce her share accordingly." I had itemized roughly how much I suspected already. Around $3,200 over the past few months in various forms. Possibly more if I dug further back. I nodded, making a note. "What about the house?" I asked. "We own it jointly. I paid most of the down payment before we were married, but legally both our names are on it now." This was a key point. I didn't want to lose my home in the settlement. Not just out of sentiment, but because it was a major asset, and I frankly didn't want them, Melissa and Ryan, to end up living here together after kicking me out. The very thought made my blood boil. Teresa pursed her lips. "North Carolina equitable distribution means the house is marital property since it was titled jointly, even if you contributed more initially. However, we can argue for an unequal split in your favor given her marital misconduct. Judges here generally don't punish cheating by taking property, except if the cheating had a financial impact or extreme circumstances. but they might be sympathetic to letting you keep the house, especially if we demonstrate it aligns with how you contributed and any other factors. If she agrees to a favorable property settlement, maybe in exchange for something else, that can be negotiated too. I took note of that. Perhaps I could leverage something she wants in order to keep something I want. But honestly, what did she want? To be with Ryan, presumably. Money too, probably. Starting a new life can be expensive. Teresa continued, "We should also discuss a separation and perhaps a divorce from bed and board. It's a unique thing we have, basically a fault-based separation that can legally force her out of the house if needed, on grounds of adultery. It's not an absolute divorce, but it's useful to establish you as the injured party and, for instance, to get a court order that she must leave the marital home and you have the right to kick her out." I hadn't heard of that before, but it sounded promising if things got ugly with living arrangements. "Yes, I want her out of my house as soon as this is set in motion," I said firmly. "I have no intention of sharing a roof with her once she knows I'm taking action, and I certainly don't want to fund her living here while she—" I trailed off, grinding my teeth. "Understood," Teresa said. "We can file a divorce from bed and board immediately, citing adultery. It's basically a formalized legal separation that is fault-based. If granted, it'll support our claims and might scare her into negotiating. We'll follow that with the absolute divorce after the required 1-year separation period, but many financial issues can be settled or litigated before then. Property division, support, etc. Also, since you have evidence, we could, if we wanted, sue her lover separately for damages." My ears pricked at that. "Sue Ryan? On what grounds?" She folded her hands. "North Carolina is one of the few states that still allows the tort of alienation of affection. Essentially, a spouse can sue a third party who interfered in the marriage and caused the loss of affection from their partner. It's an old law, but it's very much alive here. There have been cases where jilted spouses won large sums from their ex's lover, in the hundreds of thousands, even over $1 million in a few notorious cases. There's also a related tort called criminal conversation, which is basically suing for adultery itself. You have to prove sexual intercourse occurred, but from your evidence, that's clear. I was aware of these from a late-night internet rabbit hole I'd fallen into. In fact, reading about one man in North Carolina who won a $750,000 judgment against his wife's lover had partly inspired me. It was gratifying to think the law might allow me to hit Ryan where it hurts, not just socially or physically, but financially. Legally sound revenge. A slow smile crept onto my face. "I'm very interested in that option," I said. "Even if I don't care about the money per se, I want to make him suffer consequences too. He was my friend. He knew exactly what he was doing to my marriage. He should pay for it." Teresa nodded. "It can be a powerful leverage tool. Many times the lover will settle and pay some amount rather than go through a humiliating trial and risk a huge judgment. And even if not, just the process can be punishing. Depositions, public scandal, legal fees. We'd essentially drag him through the mud. Is he a person of means? Does he have assets?" I considered. Ryan worked in IT for a mid-sized firm, made decent money, but he's not rich. He had some savings and a condo, but he also had a good reputation and a broad social network, including many of our mutual friends and his colleagues. A public lawsuit would embarrass the hell out of him. The money might ruin him moderately. If a big judgment, he'd probably have to declare bankruptcy. But even filing the suit would be a shock and awe tactic. He's not wealthy, but he has a career he'd hate to lose. The embarrassment alone might be worth it, I said. "Exactly," Teresa replied crisply. We should be careful to ensure you come off as the sympathetic party. The goal is to maximize pressure on them while you stay above reproach legally. No harassment, no threats outside legal channels. Let us handle communication once we initiate. In the meantime, you should prepare for the personal aspect, the separation conversation, logistics of moving out or kicking her out, etc. You might also consider quietly telling close family or friends who can support you. But don't let it leak to anyone who might tip her off before we file. I agreed. I've played dumb so far. She has no idea I know. I plan to keep it that way until everything's ready to go. Before I left, Teresa and I outlined the immediate steps. She would draft the divorce from bed and board complaint citing adultery and cruel behavior. We'd throw in any applicable grounds to strengthen it. Simultaneously, she'd prepare a verified divorce complaint for when the 1-year separation period is done, including fault grounds to lay the foundation for no alimony and for favorable distribution. A lawsuit against Ryan for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. She'd get those papers ready too. Timing of service was something we discussed. We wanted a coordinated strike, but possibly staggering them to keep pressure on both. A plan for serving Melissa the separation/divorce paperwork in a manner that gave me an advantage. I opted to serve her unexpectedly, when I was safely out of reach of any volatile reaction, but able to see it happen. We decided a process server could hand her the papers at her workplace later, but I wanted the satisfaction of seeing her face, frankly. In the end, I told Teresa I'd handle serving Melissa personally. It's allowed, as long as I deliver the papers properly and note the time for an affidavit. I wanted to look in her eyes when her world came crashing down. Just once. For Ryan's lawsuit, we'd hire a professional process server to catch him off guard, maybe at his office or some public place to maximize embarrassment. After an hour, I left the lawyer's office feeling more empowered than I had in days. I had a plan. The path ahead was set with legal landmines for them, and I just needed to guide them straight into each one. Deception and patience. In the weeks that followed, I lived a double life. To Melissa, I was the same old Jack, perhaps a bit distant or stressed. I let her assume it was work or something. But I still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, still asked about her day, still shared a bed with her at night. Each of those small intimacies felt poisoned, but I endured them for the sake of the plan. It was surreal, lying beside her knowing all I knew, holding back the urge to scream at her or throw her out. Patience, I reminded myself constantly. In the field, patience can mean the difference between an ambush sprung too early and a victory won. I had to wait for the optimal moment to strike. Melissa, for her part, seemed largely oblivious to my internal war. If anything, she was more cheerful now that she thought her affair was seamlessly integrated into her schedule. She thought she was getting away with it, which both enraged me and oddly helped sell my facade. She was less suspicious of me because in her mind, everything was going fine. I noted that she texted Ryan frequently. I made a point not to spy on her phone again directly, too risky to get caught. But since I had cloned her message data to my own device, something I'd set up with an app after that first time, I could passively monitor new messages on a secure feed. I know that sounds highly technical, but it's not too hard if you're familiar with certain software. Importantly, it wasn't illegal in my state since I owned the phone account, and thus had authorization. It's a gray area, but I wasn't exactly worried about her suing me over that later, given her own wrongdoing. If this were another state, I might not have dared, but I confirmed North Carolina's laws carefully. As long as I wasn't hacking a device that wasn't mine or recording conversations I wasn't a part of, I was fine. Monitoring a phone on a family plan that I paid for was unlikely to land me in any trouble. I also refrained from any illegal GPS tracking. I simply used my own eyes and the info she freely gave in her lies. Through her messages, I knew the affair was intensifying. They were plotting overnight getaways, talking about the future in vague terms. At one point, I saw a message that made my blood run cold. Ryan asked her, "Did you talk to the lawyer yet?" She replied, "Not yet, I will. He's been distant, but I doubt he suspects. I just need to time it right." Talk to the lawyer? It sounded like they were planning for her to file for divorce from me, presumably once they had their ducks in a row, maybe to catch me off guard and take me to the cleaners. The sheer audacity. I had to set my phone down and breathe slowly for a full minute after reading that. They were not just messing around. They were contemplating a life together, an exit strategy for her. And clearly, Ryan was pushing her to file soon. Perhaps they got spooked that she might get caught if it dragged on. Perhaps Ryan was just eager to have her free. I realized there was a risk in waiting too long. If she filed first, especially if I was still ignorant in her eyes, she might try to get a favorable settlement or temporary orders for support, or to kick me out of the house. If she played a victim somehow, who knows? It's not like she had grounds, but I didn't want her to have any procedural upper hand. Luckily, I was already ahead of them. My attorney had all our paperwork nearly ready. I decided to accelerate my timeline slightly. Originally, I planned to let a month or two slide to gather even more evidence. Teresa had even arranged a private investigator to follow them once, just to have third-party verification and possibly more photographs. He delivered some excellent shots of them kissing in a park and entering Ryan's condo together on another night. But now I felt it was time to begin the end game. Still, precision was key. I wanted the shock and awe to be simultaneous for both of them. After discussing with Teresa, we fixed the date for D-Day. It would be a Friday in early fall, conveniently, about 3 weeks before our 5th wedding anniversary. I thought that timing held a certain poetic justice. In the days leading up, I did 2 things to prepare the battlefield. First, finances. I opened a new solo bank account and quietly transferred half of our joint checking and savings into it. This wasn't theft under marital law. Those were as much mine as hers, and courts generally consider it acceptable to split shared funds when a separation is imminent, as long as you don't hide or squander them. I left her half in the old accounts, so she wouldn't immediately notice anything wrong until statements arrived, or until she tried to drain them herself. I also halted any automatic transfers to her personal accounts and changed direct deposit of my paycheck to the new account. Essentially, I cut off the free flow of money that she might have expected in a divorce scenario. I also preemptively paid off and canceled the one credit card where I was the primary holder, and she was an authorized user, no more putting affair expenses on my credit. I did all this one evening while she was out with Jenna again, the real Jenna this time, interestingly, as if to maintain her alibi occasionally. It felt satisfying, like fortifying a position. If she went to take financial advantage of me, she'd find a moat and walls instead of an open gate. Second, I planned the confrontation scene. Part of me did want a dramatic face-to-face reveal to throw the evidence in her face and watch her mask fall. But I had to be cautious. A direct confrontation at home could turn ugly or worse, tip her off before legal papers were served, giving her time to prepare defenses or hide things. No. I needed to serve the papers at the same time as confronting, or effectively the same day. I came up with a careful script for myself. I decided that on D-Day morning, I'd ask her to meet me for lunch near my office, something we rarely did, to talk about something important. I predicted she might suspect I was on to her or that something was off, but I'd play it as a need to discuss an issue at work or maybe even feign that I wanted to talk about our relationship, which might make her think I was going to say I felt distance and maybe she'd double down on lying. Then, at that lunch meeting, I would confront her calmly with the truth and hand over the envelope with the legal documents, the divorce complaint, the separation filing, everything. If all went well, by the time she walked into that lunch, Ryan would have already been served earlier that same morning with the lawsuit summons at his job, completely blindsiding him. That way, possibly, he might even try to call her in a panic while we were meeting, which would just add to the impact. Even if not, the coordination ensured neither could warn the other. I also arranged with my attorney that immediately after the confrontation, she would file all the documents at the courthouse so that they became official records that day. Timing was key, but Teresa assured me her team could time it to the hour. Perhaps the most devious part of my plan, I decided to feign a bit of vulnerability and mercy in the confrontation to see if Melissa would incriminate herself further or try one last manipulation. I wanted that on tape. So I equipped myself with a discreet voice recorder and my phone set to record as backup. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, so this was perfectly legal. I intended to capture her initial reactions, maybe even an apology or an admission of how far it went, which could only further guarantee she'd have no wiggle room later. And if she tried to lie or blame me, well, that would also be illuminating on tape for a judge or for posterity. When the day finally came, I felt as ready as I could ever be. It was a crisp Friday in October. I left home in the morning like everything was normal, with a brief goodbye peck on Melissa's cheek. My stomach was fluttering, but not with nerves exactly. It was adrenaline. I remembered the feeling from just before a planned raid, that heightened clarity, a touch of excitement coursing with the cold determination. She must have noticed I was a little keyed up because she raised an eyebrow. "You seem in a good mood today," she said, sipping her coffee. I paused and gave a half smile. "It's Friday. Looking forward to the weekend," I replied truthfully. Oh, I was looking forward to this weekend indeed, unlike any other. At around 10 a.m., I got a text from Teresa's office. "Lover served. All went smoothly." A terse message, but it made my heart soar. I pictured the scene. Ryan at his office, perhaps in a meeting, when someone walks in and says, "Are you Mr. Ryan ____? You've been served." I wondered how he reacted. Shock, panic, anger. Did his co-workers see? It gave me grim satisfaction to imagine the color draining from his face as he read the lawsuit complaint, naming him as the despoiler of my marriage, demanding damages for alienation of affection, and basically laying out in lurid detail how he carried on with another man's wife. He'd know this wasn't just a spat. This was war. And he'd likely realize I must also know and be taking action with Melissa, though he wouldn't have details yet. I hoped it scared the hell out of him. At 11:30, I left my office to meet Melissa. We had agreed to meet at a quiet Italian restaurant halfway between my office and her workplace. I arrived early, chose a table in a secluded corner away from other diners, and sat where I'd have a good view of her approaching. My nerves were humming, but I felt steady. I had a slim folder with me containing a few choice printed photos, the clearest ones of her and Ryan together, and a copy of the key text messages, just in case I needed to show her proof to break through any denial. The envelope with the legal papers was in my jacket pocket. My phone and recorder were in the breast pocket, already discreetly recording audio. She arrived a few minutes late. I watched her through the window as she walked along the sidewalk, checking her phone. Did she have any inkling of what was about to happen? Was Ryan blowing up her phone after being served? If he had texted or called her in the past hour, I'd have seen it on the feed, and there'd been nothing. Perhaps he was too stunned or busy calling a lawyer. Or maybe, just maybe, he hadn't told her yet because he was embarrassed or figuring out what to do. That would be ideal, her coming in totally unsuspecting. Melissa stepped inside and spotted me. She gave me a little smile, slightly puzzled, a bit anxious. She was probably curious what important thing I needed to discuss. She sat down across from me. "Hey, you all right? You sounded serious on the phone," she said as she placed her purse down. I noticed she wasn't wearing the sapphire necklace today, perhaps thinking it too obvious. A small detail, but it annoyed me that she was still thinking of how to conceal things. I took a deep breath. Showtime. "I do have something serious to talk about," I began quietly. My eyes were on her, taking in every flicker of expression. "It's about us, Melissa. About our marriage." She immediately looked down, fiddling with the edge of a napkin. "Our marriage," she echoed. "Jack, if this is about me being busy lately, or distant, I know I've been stressed. Work has been—" I held up a hand. "Stop." The firmness in my tone made her fall silent. I realized my heart was pounding now. "Let's not do that. Let's not pretend. Not today." She looked up, directly meeting my gaze for the first time in this conversation. I saw fear there, and guilt. She opened her mouth as if to protest innocence, but something in my face must have made her hesitate. We stared at each other for a long moment, the air thick with tension. Quietly, I reached into my jacket and pulled out one of the photographs, the one of her and Ryan exiting the hotel elevator arm in arm. I laid it on the table between us. Her eyes darted to it. She visibly blanched. Her hand went to her mouth. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke with a calm coldness that I barely recognized. "I know, Melissa. I know about you and Ryan." She closed her eyes, a single tear escaping down her cheek. When she opened them, they were already red. "Jack, I didn't let her finish. Please just spare me any denials. I have evidence, photos, messages, everything." I slid another paper forward, a printout of some text messages, including her telling him, "I love you," from a week ago. Her eyes widened, seeing it in black and white. She realized the jig was up. Her shoulders slumped. How long have you known?" she whispered. "A while," I said flatly. "Long enough to plan my response." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice even more. "You have no idea what you've done, Melissa. Not just to us, but to yourself." At that, she broke into quiet sobs. There in the restaurant, tears began spilling down her face. A couple at another table glanced over, but then politely looked away, perhaps assuming we were just having a marital spat or that I was breaking up with her, which in a sense I was. I felt a twinge of pain seeing her cry. Despite everything, the sight of someone you once deeply loved in misery is hard to revel in. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her instinctively, but I steeled myself against that urge. I reminded myself of her laughing in Ryan's arms, of the lies she told effortlessly. Still, I played it neutral for now. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "Jack, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I let silence hang for a moment. Then I asked, "Why? Why did you do it?" My voice cracked in what sounded like hurt, and it wasn't entirely an act. This was partly genuine curiosity and partly for the recording. I wanted her excuses on tape. She sniffed, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "I don't know," she stammered. "It just happened. I was lonely. You were so busy with work and your reserves training, and Ryan, he was there for me when you were gone. We never planned for it to go so far. I know it's no excuse. I was selfish and stupid." Her words tumbled out, a mix of admission and justification. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. People tend to talk more when the other person is silent. And sure enough, Melissa kept talking, desperate to explain. "I thought you didn't love me anymore the way you used to," she said, voice trembling. "After you came back from your last deployment, you were distant, closed off. I was a mess too, and Ryan, he listened to me. One night we just made a mistake, and then another, and then—" She stopped, fresh tears flowing. "I'm so sorry. It was never about hurting you." I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing her words. Maybe there was some truth in what she said about my distance after deployment. I had struggled with some mild PTSD, I won't lie. But many couples go through that. She never communicated she was so unhappy. Instead, she turned to him. The betrayal still eclipsed any reason she could offer. "You destroyed our marriage," I said softly. "And you did it behind my back with my friend." I shook my head slowly. "Do you love him?" She blinked at the question. I don't know. I thought I did, but Jack, I love you too. Just maybe I felt—" "Don't," I interjected, holding up a hand again. "Don't say you love me. You have a hell of a way of showing it." I felt a flare of real anger there, and I had to dial it back. Getting into a shouting match here wasn't the plan. I took a deep breath. She looked down, ashamed. "Fair," she murmured. "I know I don't have the right to ask anything, but can we fix this at all? Can you ever forgive me?" She looked up with an expression so pitiful that once I would have melted. "I'll end it with Ryan. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling. I'll sign anything you want. I just—" She reached across as if to touch my hand, but I pulled back instinctively, and she withdrew, sobbing quietly. This was the moment to execute the final step. I let a silence hang, as if I were considering her plea. In reality, my mind was made up, but I wanted her to dangle in hope for just an instant. Feigned vulnerability, as planned. I let my voice waver as if on the edge of tears. "Mel, I can't just undo what you two did. It's burned into my mind. How can I trust you again?" My eyes moistened, some genuine emotion leaking through on top of the act. I was feeling a whirlwind of feelings by now. You were my world, and you threw it away for him. She was openly crying now. I know, I was awful. If I lose you, I have nothing. He means nothing next to you, I swear. It was a stupid infatuation, and I was in a bad place. Please, if there's any chance—" She reached for my hand again. This time I let her clasp it for a moment. Her hand was cold, trembling. I fixed her with a steady look. "There's only one path I see," I lied. "We divorce. I can't stay married to you after this." I felt her hand spasm, and she started to protest, but I continued. "However, I promise I won't be vindictive or cruel. We'll do this quietly. No dragging our friends or families into the mud. I won't ruin you, Mel. I just want to end it and move on." This clearly wasn't what she hoped to hear. She likely hoped for reconciliation talk. But the "I won't ruin you" line had the effect I wanted. She looked at me cautiously, a hint of relief amidst sorrow. "Oh, okay," she said hesitantly. If that's what you need, I'll cooperate. I deserve nothing, I know. She swallowed. We can keep it civil. I don't want to hurt you anymore. If divorcing me helps you heal, I'll do it. I almost laughed at her sudden martyr tone. Keep it civil? Lady, you have no idea what's coming. But outwardly, I gave a sad smile. It's for the best. I slid the envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table. I've already prepared the papers. Her eyes widened slightly. She wasn't expecting it right now. She opened the envelope with shaky fingers and glanced at the top page. Complaint for divorce from bed and board. Adultery, she whispered as she read. Her face drained of color. She flipped through and saw legal language, her own text messages as exhibits, a summons. The reality was sinking in that I'd come armed with legal weapons, not just emotional ones. Jack, it's official, I said. I filed these today. Technically, they'd be filed within the hour, but close enough. You will need to move out of the house by the end of the month. She looked up at me, stricken. Move out? But where will I could stay with my sister or… She suddenly frowned, as if another thought hit her. Wait, how will we… What about the money and… I let my expression harden just a bit. We'll sort out the finances legally. My lawyer will be in touch with you. Or your lawyer if you get one, which I strongly suggest you do. That hint of relief I'd given her vanished as she began flipping through more pages. She realized this wasn't some amicable fill-in-the-blank divorce kit. This was a detailed onslaught. You're asking the court to bar me from alimony due to adultery and to distribute assets unequally? She said, voice rising slightly in alarm. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Yes. Did you expect me to fund your new life with him? North Carolina law is clear that a cheating spouse doesn't get alimony here. You might want to look that up if you doubt me. And as for assets, I can prove you spent marital money on your affair, which a judge will likely subtract from your share. I've already separated our bank accounts. You'll find about half the cash is gone. That's mine now. The rest is effectively frozen until we negotiate. You should also know I canceled the credit card you used for your hotel rendezvous. I'm done paying for your betrayal. Melissa's mouth opened in shock. She was discovering just how thoroughly I had prepared. My God, you've thought of everything. Her reaction wasn't anger yet. It was still disbelief and fear. She wasn't a confrontational person by nature, and right now she looked positively ill. Honestly, I expected more rage or defensiveness, but she seemed more panicked about her future now than anything else. Perhaps because she knew in her heart she was in the wrong. She didn't try to fight the logic of what I was doing. She just looked overwhelmed. I wasn't entirely done. I decided to deliver one more blow, the final torpedo to sink the HMS Melissa and Ryan. There's also something in there concerning Ryan, I said evenly. She looked up sharply. Ryan, what do you mean? I let out a cold little chuckle. You didn't think I'd forget about him, did you? I've filed a civil lawsuit against him for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. Basically, suing him for sleeping with you and ruining our marriage. It's also in North Carolina law, look it up. He was actually served with the papers this morning, probably about an hour ago. Her jaw literally dropped. You're suing Ryan? Jack, that's so public. His job, our friends, people will find out. I shrugged, feigning regret. Well, actions have consequences. Maybe you two should have thought about that. I gave the process servers free rein to serve him wherever they could find him. If that happened to be at his workplace in front of his colleagues, Oh well. She covered her face with her hands. Oh my God, this will ruin him. He could lose his job, his reputation. She stopped, realizing perhaps she shouldn't be pleading someone else's case to me right now. Jack, please. That lawsuit. Can't we keep this private? I'll sign whatever you want in the divorce. I'll disappear, just don't drag us through court in front of everyone. Ah, there it was. The fear of public exposure. Both of them cared a lot about appearances. If she wanted to keep it private, she'd need to comply with my terms indeed. I made a mental note of that leverage, but outwardly I sighed. I'm not inclined to show mercy to him, Melissa. He was my friend, and he betrayed me intimately. He doesn't deserve a quiet life after this. Her tears had stopped. Now she just looked dazed and frightened. This is a nightmare, she murmured. I never wanted it to become like this. I was so stupid. I let the silence hang a bit. Then I said in a slightly softer tone, you made choices, and these are the repercussions. I didn't create this situation, you and he did. I'm just finishing it. She sniffled and nodded weakly. I understand. Then she reached over the table once more, not to touch me, but imploring. I know I have no right to ask, but will you at least promise me one thing? This divorce. We can settle it between us, right? It doesn't have to drag out forever in court. I'll agree to whatever is fair. I don't want to fight. I studied her. Was this genuine remorse or just self-preservation? Probably both intertwined. She looked utterly defeated at the moment. This was good for me strategically. A compliant adversary is easier to handle. But I was not about to trust anything at face value. Still, I gave her a small nod. If you truly don't want to fight, then this can be over quickly. Sign the agreement my lawyer will draft. It will outline property division as I see fair. I'm not out to leave you destitute, Melissa, but I also won't reward your behavior. If you cooperate, I won't publicly release any of this evidence beyond what's necessary in legal filings. We can tell people we just grew apart and are divorcing, if that's what you want them to believe. I haven't told anyone yet, except my attorney and, well, process servers. But gossip can be kept minimal if we handle it right. That seemed to relieve her slightly. She wiped her face and inhaled shakily. Thank you, she whispered. You're being more decent about this than I deserve. I didn't respond to that. I checked the time. My work lunch break was nearly over, and frankly, I'd had about all I could take of this emotionally exhausting scene. I signaled for the check, for my iced tea. She hadn't ordered anything. Melissa sat quietly, staring at the divorce papers in front of her, occasionally sniffing or dabbing her eyes. She looked like a lost, broken soul. In another life, I might have felt nothing but sympathy. In this one, I felt a grim mix of pity and satisfaction. When we stood up to leave, she hesitated. Do you need me to go somewhere? I mean, do you want me to come home tonight, or? It was a good question. I considered it. I didn't really want to spend another night under the same roof, but throwing her out tonight might be legally messy without a separation order enforced, and unnecessarily cruel, maybe. The documents asked her to leave by end of month, which was a couple weeks away. I could tolerate a short interim if needed, and I doubted she'd want to stick around long under these circumstances. You can stay at the house for now, I said carefully, but I'll be sleeping in the guest room, and I expect you'll start making arrangements to move out soon. If you'd rather go to your sister's or somewhere sooner, feel free. She nodded, shamefaced. I'll probably go to my sister's this weekend. I can't face you like this, I'm so sorry, Jack. Fresh tears started. I raised a hand. Please, don't apologize again. Just do what needs to be done. We'll communicate through lawyers as much as possible. She opened her mouth as if to say something more, but then closed it. With a last sorrowful glance, she turned and walked away out of the restaurant. I watched her go, a strange hollowness in my chest. This was the woman I'd loved. I had won, in a sense. She was totally at my mercy now. But there was no triumph in that moment, only a profound sense of loss. Then I remembered. I had one more act to carry out in this drama, and I suspected it might be more satisfying. With purpose, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd never thought I'd dial. It rang several times before he picked up. Hello? Ryan's voice came on the line, cautious and tense. He likely didn't recognize the number. It was my work cell. It's Jack, I said evenly. A pause, then a nervous exhale. Jack, look, man. Shut up. I cut him off, my tone icy. I have nothing to hear from you except acknowledgement that you received what you deserve. Did you get served, Ryan? Another pause. I could almost picture him swallowing hard. Yes, he said, and tried to launch into something. I'm sorry. I said shut up, I snarled quietly. I was done playing nice now. My voice was low but seething. You're sorry? You're only sorry because you got caught. You weren't sorry when you were sleeping in my bed with my wife, were you? He didn't answer that. He had no answer. Good. I want you to listen, I continued, and I want you to understand clearly. I've only begun to wreck your life. You hurt me in a way I can never fully repay, but I'm damn well going to try. Those papers you got are a lawsuit. I intend to pursue it to the fullest extent. It will cost you money, reputation, maybe even your job if your bosses frown on this kind of thing. You might want to start thinking about retaining a lawyer yourself. Because you're in deep... Jack, please, he finally burst out. Can't we at least talk about this? The three of us, civilly? This doesn't have to... I laughed sharply at civilly. The gall of him. You want civil? You should have thought about civil behavior before seducing my wife. There's no negotiation here. The only thing you can do to slightly lessen the pain is to stay the hell away from me and anything to do with me, and pray that maybe my anger cools someday. But as of now, you better prepare for the consequences. My lawyer will be in touch with your employer soon to subpoena your salary info and whatever else we need for the case. They'll all know why. Did you know a successful alienation of affection lawsuit can mean hundreds of thousands in damages? You probably don't have that kind of money, do you, Ryan? I might end up owning your precious condo, your car, whatever, if the court awards it. So enjoy that thought. He was silent except for ragged breathing. I suspect he was in shock. He probably never dreamed in all our years of friendship that I had this ruthlessness in me. But he never saw himself from my perspective until now, as the enemy, and I will not show mercy to an enemy when the mission is righteous. Finally, in a low, shaky voice, he asked, What do you want from me? To drop the suit? I smiled, though he couldn't see it. What do I want? Nothing you can give. You can't undo sleeping with Melissa, and I doubt you have the cash to pay me off even if I were open to that. Which I'm not, because frankly, I'd rather see you squirm in court. No, Ryan, I don't want anything from you except to watch you lose. This phone call is merely a courtesy to inform you in no uncertain terms that if you come near me or try any nonsense, I will make things even worse. And don't even think about bad-mouthing me to our mutual friends or claiming some story. I have evidence of everything. If I catch wind of any slander or attempt to twist the narrative, I'll share all the dirty details with everyone. Got it? A defeated silence then. Got it, he muttered. One more thing, I said. I've spoken to Melissa. She's aware of everything now, obviously. Don't involve her in any scheme to counter me. Like if you thought of pressuring her to lie for you or something. That ship has sailed. She's too busy dealing with the divorce I just served her. You two deserve each other, honestly. But I doubt your little romance will survive all this. I let that barb sink in. Truthfully, I expected their relationship to implode under stress. Few affairs survive when exposed to the light. It's easy to be lovers when it's secret and exciting. It's much harder when real-life consequences hit. He didn't respond, which told me he knew it too. I ended the call with a final statement. This was the last time you'll ever hear my voice, Ryan. The next time we meet will be in a courtroom, if at all. So farewell, pal. Enjoy the fallout. And I hung up on him mid-reply. I stood there on the sidewalk after that call, breathing hard. My hands trembled slightly from the adrenaline rush of finally speaking my mind to him. I won't lie. It felt damn good. I replayed his meek "got it" in my head and felt a grim smile form. A sense of relief washed over me. It was done. The traps were sprung, the confrontation executed, the enemy routed. There would still be formalities and processes in the coming months. The divorce finalized, the negotiations or court hearings, the lawsuit drama. But those were essentially mop-up operations. The major battles had been won in a single day without a drop of blood spilled. Just tears and paper cuts. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Melissa and Ryan, and oddly peaceful for me. Once I set the crushing wheel of consequences in motion, I felt myself detach and observe almost as a bystander. I kept my interactions with Melissa to a minimum. True to her word that day at lunch, she didn't fight me on much. Perhaps she was too guilt-ridden or simply pragmatic. But when my attorney sent over a proposed settlement, she quietly signed. Under the agreement, I kept our house. I'd bought out her small equity share, which wasn't much since I had covered most mortgage payments. I kept my car and half the savings, the half I already secured. She kept her car and a small bank account of hers. We split household goods with little fuss. Frankly, I didn't care about most furniture. I let her take what she wanted of the decor. She waived any claim to alimony explicitly in the document, acknowledging her adultery barred it anyway. And importantly, we included a clause that if any evidence of significant dissipation of marital funds on the affair surfaced beyond what we already accounted for, the $3K I identified, that portion would be reallocated to me or deducted from her share. I had receipts for the hotel and gifts, so effectively I already reduced her portion by that amount in the split. She didn't object. What could she say? She knew what I knew. The legal separation was quickly granted by a judge, given the evidence attached. It declared that due to her adultery, I was injured and had the right to eject her from the home. But by the time that order came through, she had already moved out voluntarily. 2 days after the confrontation, she packed a few suitcases and went to stay with her older sister in the suburbs. I stood in the foyer as she left. We barely spoke, except her quietly saying, "Goodbye, Jack," and me nodding. It was surreal, but I mostly felt relief watching her drive away. That weekend, I changed the locks on the house. I also indulged in a thorough cleaning, stripping the bedsheets, scrubbing every corner, as if erasing the residue of her betrayal from my living space. It was cathartic, physically tiring but mentally cleansing work. Our close friends and family were given a simple announcement. We have decided to separate and divorce. We phrased it as mutual where possible. I could tell some friends were shocked. From the outside, we had seemed fine. A couple of my buddies from the army reached out immediately, suspecting something was off, but I just told them I wasn't ready to talk about details. I wasn't about to broadcast the affair. I wanted to maintain some dignity and not look like I was trying to rally sympathy. Plus, part of me indeed hoped to keep it relatively discreet, as I'd promised, so long as she cooperated. And she had. Interestingly, Melissa herself told her sister and parents the truth, that she had cheated, and that it was her fault. I learned this later from her sister, who felt compelled to call me and apologize on behalf of the family. They were furious with her, apparently. Her mother even tried to call me to express how ashamed and sorry she was for what Melissa did. I politely told her it was not her fault at all, and I appreciated the support. I will give Melissa credit. She didn't try to scapegoat me or spin lies to make herself look better to those who mattered. She took the lumps. That might have been genuine remorse or just inability to lie further when caught. I'm not sure, but it made my life easier not having to defend against some concocted story. Of course, not everyone was kept in the dark about the affair. Our mutual friend group inevitably learned bits and pieces. I suspect Melissa's sister spilled to her own close friend who told someone, etc. Soon enough, the rumor mill churned that she'd cheated with a friend of mine. People can put two and two together. One of my friends, Alan, approached me gently and said he'd heard a wild rumor and wanted to know the truth because he had confronted Ryan about it. I chose to be frank with Alan. He's a trustworthy guy who'd been in our circle for years. When I confirmed that yes, Melissa had an affair with Ryan, Alan's face turned red with anger. He then revealed that Ryan had tried to lie to him when asked. Ryan claimed that I was spreading lies out of anger, and that it was actually me who had been a neglectful husband, etc. Hearing this nearly made me break my vow to never speak to Ryan again. I wanted to find him and beat him within an inch of his life for compounding his betrayal with slander. But I didn't have to. Alan said he didn't believe Ryan and basically told him he was unwelcome in our friend circle going forward. Apparently, most of our friends followed suit. Word travels fast in such circles. Cheating with a friend's wife is about the biggest social sin there is. Practically overnight, Ryan became a pariah among our acquaintances. Even those who didn't know me well found it ugly. He eventually stopped showing up to gatherings or group chats entirely. I couldn't have engineered a better social excommunication if I tried. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. He did it to himself. Social consequences, check. Professionally, I heard through the grapevine that Ryan's job indeed took notice of the lawsuit. While they couldn't fire him just for being sued over an affair, that's not illegal in the corporate sense, the embarrassment certainly didn't help his standing. He was up for a promotion before, I doubt he'll get it now. More concretely, he had to take time off to deal with depositions and meetings for the lawsuit, which his boss was reportedly unhappy about. A colleague told me morale towards him was icy. Apparently, some people knew me and what happened, and word spread at the office too. So at work he became that guy, the dishonorable one. My career, on the other hand, went on fine. If anything, burying myself in work helped distract me from the emotional rubble. My performance stayed solid, and nobody at work knew anything except I was going through a divorce. I informed HR quietly and updated my health benefits to remove her. The legal case against Ryan progressed steadily. Our lawsuit made very clear claims that we had a loving marriage. I might have exaggerated the happiness a bit in the complaint text, but it's to establish the love before the affair, that he maliciously and willfully seduced her, and that his actions alienated her affection for me and broke up the marriage. The evidence attached was damning, explicit texts, dates, and times of liaisons, even affidavits from the PI and copies of receipts. Honestly, there was no defense he could muster, except perhaps to claim our marriage was already failing, which wouldn't hold water, since by all outward appearances it wasn't. And I had plenty of messages and photos to demonstrate affection prior to the affair. Rather than let it go to trial, his attorney, a rather frazzled man who called my lawyer multiple times with settlement offers, urged a settlement. Initially, they offered something laughable like $10,000 just to drop it. I scoffed. I told Teresa I wanted pain. She relayed that we'd be happy to go before a jury and let them decide. North Carolina juries had in the past awarded 6 figures for this sort of thing. That must have rattled Ryan, because within a month, his attorney came back with a proposal. $50,000 to settle out of court, plus a written apology. Now $50K wasn't nothing. It would cover all my legal fees and then some. But I hesitated. I truly didn't need his money. I'm financially stable. What I wanted was to brand him with this, make him feel it. A trial verdict would do that more publicly. However, trials are lengthy, and I was honestly getting tired of the saga. And a part of me grudgingly thought about letting it end for my own peace. After consulting with Teresa, I agreed to settle at $75,000 and a formal apology letter where he admits wrongdoing for my personal vindication, not that I needed it legally. We volleyed numbers and finally landed there. The settlement was signed about 3 months after the initial filing. I didn't trumpet this win. In fact, the terms included confidentiality to keep it from becoming a bigger public spectacle. Ironically, that's what he wanted. I didn't care, but it was a bargaining chip. He'd pay more if I agreed not to talk to media or anything. Not that I planned to, but I let him think it was a concession. The day I received that settlement check, drawn from his bank, was the day I truly felt the anger part of my grief cycle release. I had effectively made him pay for the privilege of betraying me. It was blood money, and I planned to use some of it for something positive for myself. I ended up taking a solo vacation cross-country and banking the rest for now. As for Melissa, our divorce paperwork proceeded without hiccup. North Carolina requires a year of separation before the absolute divorce, but since we'd done the bed and board fault separation, all the hard parts, finances, property, were settled. It was just a clock running. During that year, I barely interacted with her. A few emails about logistical stuff, polite and brief. She respected my request for space. I did hear through a mutual acquaintance that she and Ryan weren't seeing each other anymore. No surprise, under the stress of all this, they'd fractured. I suspect once I sued him and she was mired in shame, their illicit romance lost its shine. Maybe they blamed each other for getting caught. Maybe, as she somewhat indicated at lunch, she never really loved him and was just escaping her issues. In any case, by the holidays, she was essentially living the life of someone who had made a terrible mistake and was trying to rebuild. She continued staying with her sister for a while, then moved into a small apartment. A part of me felt a twinge of sadness for her. She looked drained and thin the one time I glimpsed her in passing at a bank. We didn't speak, just locked eyes for a moment before she looked away, embarrassed. She was facing social exile in her own way. Her family was supportive but disappointed, and some friends had distanced themselves. However, I also know she had a couple of close friends who stood by her despite disapproving of what she did. And she started therapy. Her sister mentioned that to me, almost as an olive branch. Good for her, I thought. Maybe she'll sort out why she blew up her life. But that was no longer my concern. We were done. On the day the divorce became final, 1 year and a day after I'd kicked off the war, I remember signing the final decree papers in my attorney's office. There was no hearing since it was uncontested by then. Just a judge's signature. Teresa handed me the certified decree that restored me to single status. She offered a congratulations, for officially ending it and getting everything I wanted out of it. I shook her hand and thanked her for all her help. Hiring her was one of my best decisions in this mess. Her strategic guidance gave me the legal advantage at every turn. That evening, I sat on the back porch of my house. Yes, mine alone now, with a glass of bourbon, listening to the quiet of the autumn night. The legal battles were over. Melissa was gone from my life except as a memory. Ryan was but a bitter name on an apology letter and a cleared check in my account. Justice, such as it was, had been served cold and thorough. I won. I absolutely won. The scorecard isn't in love or happiness. Those are intangible, and she and Ryan lost those anyway. The scorecard I cared about was tangible consequences. Financially, I lost almost nothing. In fact, I was slightly richer post-lawsuit and kept my major assets, while Melissa had to start over, and Ryan paid out and possibly stunted his career. Legally, I had vindication in black and white, and they had court orders against them. Socially, I maintained my respect, whereas they bore the quiet disgrace among peers and family. Yet, as I sat there, I didn't feel the glee one might expect. What I felt was a deep, weary contentment, and maybe a hint of sorrow. Contentment that I had stood up for myself, that I refused to be a victim and instead used my wits and the law to right a wrong as much as one can. Sorrow that it had ever come to this, that a woman I loved became a foe to vanquish, that a friend became a target. War, even a personal one, always has collateral damage. In this case, the collateral damage was the remnants of my own innocence in a way. Still, if I had to do it all over again, I would. Perhaps I'd choose a life where I wasn't betrayed in the first place. But given that reality, I have no regrets in how I responded. I kept it legally sound. I stayed mostly in control of my emotions, and I delivered the consequences without stooping to their level of deceit. Morally gray? Sure. Some might say I was ruthless and unforgiving. They're right. I was. That's a shade of gray I can live with, because the alternative was to roll over and either remain miserably married to a cheater or let them walk away happily together after shattering me. No, not on my watch. Honor matters. It was ingrained in me by the military and by my own values. They had none when they did what they did. But I upheld mine in my own way by answering betrayal with justice. A cold breeze picked up that night, rustling the fallen leaves. I took a slow sip of bourbon and let it burn warmly down my throat, the way vengeance, now finally complete, had burned warmly through my soul this past year. As the bitterness of the past began to fade, I looked ahead. I was free to start anew, to eventually maybe trust someone again, with hard-earned caution, to live without the deceit that had plagued my last year of marriage. The chapter was closed. I had burned it all down, the lies, the false relationships, and from those ashes, I could now rebuild myself. Inside the house, my phone pinged with a new email. Likely something from Teresa or some final bill. I'd check it later. For now, I just wanted to sit outside a little longer, under the vast night sky of this big city that somehow felt calmer than it had in a long time. I breathed in the cool air and let it out. The war at home was over. I had won the battle and the war, at a cost I was willing to bear. And in the quiet aftermath, I found peace.